All right, folks. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. With start again with the comments. Letters.
Yep. Dear Mr. Seymour and the Board of Education, as a fellow educator, I certainly value students' opinions and feelings. I'm glad Lake Placid athletes are contributing to the sports merger discussion. It's unfortunate any Lake Placid athlete has needlessly worried about Northwood students impacting their playing time. Could you please make clear to these understandably upset athletes that the only future Northwood students requesting to merge are actually their current teammates? As such, the dynamics of Lake Placid sports teams would not change. Allowing all Northwood students to merge would be irresponsible and nonsensical. As previously mentioned, the request is strictly for day students who reside full-time in Lake Placid, whose parents are taxpayers and who've attended Lake Placid School District. During last meeting, Tim's tirade, Mr. Seymour reminded us that pillars of our district include project-based learning and student involvement in decision-making. Wouldn't it be something if students worked together on a proposal with clear guidelines? This would be the ultimate student-led project. If you haven't already done so, could the district please involve coaches in a shared decision-making process? Are they opposed to the kids they've watched develop in youth and modified programs join or remain on their teams? Are they concerned that denying this merger could result in numbers so depleted a viable team is no longer possible? Also worth noting, the New York State Public High School Athletic Association actually does not exclude private school students. In fact, Northwood School is a former member. The organization defines itself as a, quote, a nonprofit voluntary educational service organization composed of public, parochial, and private schools dedicated to providing equitable and safe competition, end quote. The first bullet listed under this definition adds that member high schools may cooperate to quote, encourage as many pupils as possible to participate in athletic games, end quote. I'm not sure how denying a merger aligns with this principle. I imagine Northwood would be willing to renew its membership if this is a legitimate concern. As always, thank you for your time, Heather Odell. The next letter is from Christopher Fay. I am ready to clarify my request for sports mergers for private school day students who live in the Lake Placid School District. A, quote, day student is one that lives at home and only attends private school during their school day and do not reside at the private school. I have read the letters from Lake Placid students in regards to mergers with Northwood School for track and field. These students did an exceptional job of expressing their opinions. I am thankful to see students taking an active role in the actions of their school district. I can also understand their fear that any student who attends Northwoods could potentially take a position on a team. However, I am not asking for mergers with private schools for any athlete. I feel mergers should be granted to students who grew up playing sports with the Lake Placid students. Here's my proposed solution for potential sports mergers to please all stakeholder groups. Students must live in the Lake Placid School District. Students must have attended Lake Placid at some point, with a possible exception of students who attend North Country School and live in the Lake Placid district. Students must be day students at the private school, live at home. And sports considered for mergers must not be sports offered by the private school. I want to be clear, I am not asking for mergers for all students who attend Northwood School. I am asking for mergers for kids who grew up playing sports with the kids who attend Lake Placid and live in the school district. These are our kids. They deserve a chance to continue sports with their friends and continue to be involved in their local community. We all contributed to the great athletes they are. Finally, Lake Placid may be able to field their own teams for some sports, but there are sports that would greatly benefit from more players. Men's soccer had a student from North Country School and it was a success. More players would have helped. Lacrosse is already merged with Saranac Lake, but a varsity team was not able to be fielded last year. This sport needs mergers. Women's soccer had to move up many 8th graders to field a team, and the team struggled. They will no doubt be great down the road if many of the players who happen to be alpine racers don't attend Northwood. Or you could consider mergers for these great local athletes to continue to play together. One of the women's basketball teams had to forfeit games this year. Please discuss and consider some of the points I have laid out. I believe that most students would support mergers if certain guidelines exist that empower our local teams to stay together and limit local students from losing positions on teams. Thank you for your time. Christopher Fay.
Any other emails? Information for the public. We have a response to the request for further consideration of the Northwood Sports merger. So that is there for the people's public consumption. Moving on to reports for the board. Operations report.
All right, so I decided to, for this operations report, is to really just kind of highlight the cafeteria. It's not something we typically talk about when we deal with the operations report. I think at one point there might have even been a board goal is to annually hear about the cafeteria. So that's what I decided to put together. So I did include a 2-page summary, a couple bulleted points to highlight. And the charts, back that up. The first point is the number of meals are up from previous years, and you can see that the first diagram chart is for breakfast, and it's looking back over the last 3 years. Continually, that is really the time frame in which the school district has covered all meals as well. So you can see that green represents 2021, 22, yellow 22, 23, and then blue is the current year. I've also included the average daily counts on that, so you can see the table at the bottom, gives you a breakdown of the numbers in terms of that. But you can clearly see for breakfast, every month since September, we've increased and we've outpaced the previous 2 years. Lunch, similar comparison. With the exception of September, was a little less than last year. Otherwise, every other month has seen an increase over the previous 2 years. When you look at that, so all said, our meals are up. And say, well, why is that? Partly is meals have been free for the last 3 years. But also. You look at it, we've made some wholesale changes starting last year and this year, trying to eliminate processed foods, making things from scratch as much as possible. So we're moving in that direction, getting to that point where everything is made from scratch. You'll see that number of locally sourced areas where we're getting our foods, Juniper Hills, Lily Valley, Deru's, Rolf's, Hub on the Hill. These are just a number of them. There's also, so not only is it, cutting down on where we're getting it from far away and all that, and we're locally sourced, but it also helps with the state does offer an additional reimbursement if you can show 30% of your foods coming locally sourced. And the state, they would actually consider New York State as considered locally sourced. Because obviously, for us, Burlington and Vermont is 40 miles away, as the birds fly, but that would not be considered locally sourced. But for us, that would be considered locally sourced. But they have expanded over the years to include anything that we get. Most of our milk is done through New York and all that as well. Jump back just to kind of talk about meals. I did one of the highlights of things because I am the business person. Not on here, but if you look at our revenue, we're about $97,000 more in revenue this year than last year. little over $83,000 of that is coming from our reimbursements that we get from the federal and state. And part of that is the fact that since the beginning of November, we are a CEP, a community eligible program. So all of our meals are getting reimbursed, not just the free and reduced lunch. But this other one is kind of telling, this other number here is kind of telling of where we are with meals. So we also have an increase of nearly $14,000 in our general meal sales revenue from last year. Kind of show you that is last year at this time, we brought in about $1,300 in just general meal sales. So that's additional stuff. That could be second meals, it could be, you know, then buying chips. Well, we don't sell a lot of chips, but buying other things, but it's all, a lot of it is second meals. So went from bringing in about $1,300 at this time last year to over, you know, $15,000. Yes.
Wow.
So we're sitting at about, you know, almost $14,000 in added revenue on just the additional meal sales.
Must be good meals.
Well, I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
It's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
They're still trying to, right, they're fiddling with, they're trying to add new things.
Right.
Part of that is, we started the salad bar at the middle high school last year. It's increasing in popularity. We're averaging about 60 meals a day that are just salad bar. But we do up here, we have Phil what he does is he allows kids, so if they're getting a meal, but then they also want something from the salad bar, he will allow them to get that from the salad bar, and it's just part of the meal. So they can get their normal meal, but then like if they want additional fruits and vegetables or whatever, he allows that, and it's not costing them, and it's not adding like, oh, that's a second meal. We're not charging them for it. It's because if you got a child that wants additional fruits and vegetables that are fresh, we're allowing it, and you know, absolutely, that's what we want.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Hold on,
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the salad bar, and actually that's kind of the thought process is if we have someone that wants to load up on the salad bar stuff, have at it, unless they want all croutons. Yeah, that's right. Save a few. So we're seeing an increase in popularity there to the point where we're probably looking to. Right now, we have a used salad bar that we got from the hospital last year. It's all old school in the sense you got to fill it up with ice and all that. So we are looking at getting a refrigerated salad bar because we're at that point where we're doing enough, time to do that. So a couple $1,000 to upgrade our salad bar because we're seeing success there. The milk machine that they put in this current year to get away from the cartons. What Phil tells me is dramatically reducing waste, and the seniors that presented last year said, here's one of the reasons why we should go to a milk machine as opposed to cartons is you're going to cut down on your waste and Phil's that you're seeing that. Not seeing a lot of spillage and stuff like that. So kids just going in and filling it all up, and again, it's there. We don't track if a kid wants to go back 4 or 5 times to get milk. We're allowing it.
And they do.
And they do.
Sewage.
Yeah, and we do. And again, they're not being charged extra for it because you get that child that wants 4 glasses of milk, they're going to have it. So even though you see that, I mean, obviously there's some additional expenses to that, but you can see our revenue was up nonetheless. Enacting all of these things. So again, it's a work in progress, and Phil has these nice goals, and we're getting to that point. Changing the meals up and stuff like that. So, but I wanted to share kind of the highlights as to where we are with the cafeteria at this point. That going with a full-time person last year, really investing in the food program is starting to make a difference. Questions on cafeteria and look at it right now?
No, good job. Being a parent that has 4 kids in the district, we went from school lunch is horrible, dad, I'm full, I don't want dinner. So have at it. Keep doing what you're doing. It's dramatically changing, and it's awesome.
And still is, again, it's always a lot of it's trial and error in terms of trying something to see what the kids like, and then trying something different, and then move from there. But, it's the goal is to always get better. Get to that point where as much as, the food is fresh can be, to be during the other time, so.
The thing that in our house is talked about all the time, is muffins.
Oh,
We
Yes.
talk about the muffins all the time.
you know the rotation? Because there's a daily
This
rotation.
is a favorite.
Apparently
across
Tim
the
likes the
board
muffins.
this.
Oh, yeah, I'm in Holland. Every other day at the elementary in the morning or the high school. Elementary, I get to see all of the younger kids, but muffins.
One more item, under this, with operations is not cafeteria related, it's actually related to the buses. I know there was a resolution, in terms of having you guys approve the resolution for the purchase of the 3 buses, and I asked Karen to pull it because, I want to get some additional numbers about, the possibility of purchasing the buses as opposed to leasing the buses. One, what I realized is that prices have increased to the point for these 3 buses, we're looking at an additional, almost $40,000 more, because of just the price of buses, interest rates have doubled since last year and all that. So we right now for 3 buses, one of our, purchases 2 years ago, purchased 3 buses, at least 3 buses, and the annual payment for those 3 buses was $57,000. For these new buses that we're looking to get, that annual payment will be $102,000.
So you want to compare it to a purchase?
So I want to compare it to a purchase. Our aid ratio is still the same, so that's,
Right.
what we would do is, so there's 2 options if we want to end up purchasing. So we can either purchase them outright, which, the resolution would read something, or proposition would read something about potentially using fund balance to buy the buses right outright. There you go, pay cash, 500 and some $1,000 for 3 buses, and use our unassigned fund balance to do that. Or
Because the lease has built into it, an interest rate,
right,
and so now that makes it, I got it,
yes,
makes sense.
or
Makes
we
sense.
bond it, which is
Yeah.
a car loan for 5 years, because we can do it over 5 years, that's what I was.
So what is the interest rate on the bond, is it like 4%?
That I don't know yet, I mean, I know what our capital bond here's,
That'll be,
but that's 3 years.
I think that'll be, be a little more.
Right, so I've asked New York Bus Sales, who we've been, purchasing our buses from the last 2 years, the Bluebirds,
Yeah.
Bluebird buses. They were gonna give me some names of bonding, so, schools around here that purchase. we can Find out what do they use for bond,
So you
just
do
to
a-
be comparison.
You do a BAN and just roll it over for 5 years.
Yes, yeah, basically, similar to this
participation,
installment, my guess is it's gonna be a similar payment. to What we're doing, but it also then addresses that question we brought up with EV buses that come 2029. We will have some buses that are ours. Maybe next year we do the same thing, we purchase it so that by 2029, 2030, we have our hybrid bus fleets where we have gas, and if the mandate still stays that starting 2027 EVs, we then are looking at purchasing, 4
So what is it like if you buy a bus, what's the life expectancy before you trade it in? 3 years, 4 years? What is it?
Well, for right now, the state, the amortization of a bus is 5 years.
Say 5 years, okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
A lot of districts around here will probably keep those buses that they purchase, I would say 8 to 10 years.
So if you can maintain them, they're still operational and.
Right.
Just keep salt. Yeah.
Yes.
My previous district, you're on a 5 to 7 year rotation.
Yeah, okay.
Depending on salt.
I like it.
Like our buses that are going back this year, when I was talking to Nikki Corson about it, we're sending a bus back that has over 30,000 miles on it after 5 years. So, obviously right, so that bus is doing a lot of daily runs,
Yep.
and maybe an occasional field trip and all that. So if you look at it, our buses do not put a lot of miles, because the way we rotate them, we're not sending the same bus on all the field trips and sports
Right, I
trips.
got it.
We're rotating it through. We have a fleet of 12 buses.
Yep.
So mileage wise, even after 5 years,
Not that much.
it's really not, yes. So my guess is we're probably looking at about, 8 years for that, and that kind of puts us in that 2030,
I like it.
2032, where, again, we have that hybrid, so we're not trying to, purchase.
Right.
Because at this point, as we talked about, there's no way we're sending a bus to Wells for a basketball game that's electric. There's no way.
There's no way we're sending it to
Well,
To be honest, there's no way you're sending it to Wilmington. They're gonna make it. Yeah.
So in the end, right, so I asked Karen to pull the resolution so that I can support numbers, then I can leave that to you guys to say, here are the options, purchase versus lease, or using fund balance versus bond. And then, we still have a month or so anyway in terms of the budget having to be approved. In April, right, I think is actually when, so. That's where we are with the operations.
Like July 1st, 27. Read the law.
Yeah,
So what is the situation? Where does it stand?
right now, there's the mandate from July 1st, 2027.
It's the law right here.
Yeah.
Being challenged. The legislature's challenging it.
They're challenging all of us.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
They're
yeah.
trying to change it.
Oh, yeah, but it stands.
Right.
As of today, it is July 1,
July 1,
Yes,
2027.
right.
Can't go opt out.
But there is no, you can make an application, the commission for an exception.
Yeah,
Well,
for
there's
1 year
different
exception.
criteria.
Yeah.
For years, another exception.
Yes. Then you get one time.
Well, I think some of the points. There's no funding. You're just basically dumping this cost on the districts and not providing any support. So if you really believe in it, then there's gotta be some monies behind it.
And the governor's even said, this is the money they have now, the grants they have now, it's seed money. I mean, really, it's not gonna fund, I think they said there's 45,000 gas buses in New York State. And the money they've earmarked isn't covering but a portion of that, and it's for now. 5 years from now, when you're in the heart of this mandate, that money is probably going to be gone unless the states puts more money into it 5 years from now.
Let me just read this real quick. Nothing in this section shall result in a couple of categories. The impairment of existing collective bargaining agreements. We should put it in the CSA agreement together. If possible.
There you go.
That's right.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Union only drive gas.
All right. Information for the board. There,
Here you go.
easy peasy. Tim's tirade.
Short and sweet. Been a week since our last meeting, quick turnaround. During that time, I attended the NISCOS conference, which is the New York State Council of School Superintendents. So I've been out of district the past 3 days, but had a wonderful time, just learning from colleagues across the state. And I thank the board for continuing to support that development for me as well. With that exception, that's my report.
Excellent.
Oh, I was longer than.
Tim's tired of short
I
today.
like reports like that.
All right, so moving on, 5A was in consent. That brings us to the personnel agenda. Recommend action, approve the following items to include in the personnel consent agenda: 7B, additional spring coaches, 2024, and 7C, teacher staff resignation. Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Second.
There we go. Any discussion, changes? If not, please vote.
Six yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our coaches who are coming on board.
Just put it on.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. If you want to, don't need their support.
all right, good. We're gonna go with the short options. Those
You're gonna still have to lean on that though, look at it.
All right.
I
All right.
didn't make it that easy.
Okay. So the recommended action, approve the NEA's Read Across America proclamation for 2024 as per the text. Do I have a motion? I'll read this before we vote. Whereas the school board of Lake Placid Central Schools stand firmly committed to promoting the reading as a catalyst for a student's future academic success, the preparation and for America's jobs of the future, and the ability to compete in the global economy. Therefore, be it resolved that this body enthusiastically endorses NEA's Read Across America and recommits our community to engage in programs and activities to make America's children the best readers in the world. Please vote.
Six yes.
I'm sure somebody. All right, thank you, everyone. Read it first. Okay, recommend action, approve the music in our schools month for the music in our schools month for the month of March 2024 as per the attached. Whereas for more than 30 years, March has officially been designated by the National Association for Music Education, NAFME, as Music in Our Schools Month of year. Urging communities across the nation to focus on music education. Now therefore be it resolved, the Lake Placid School Board Education does hereby proclaim March 2024 as Music in Our Schools Month and encourages all citizens to celebrate and acknowledge every day, but especially in March, that music education is an essential part of every student's well-rounded education. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Doug. Second, Brian.
All right. Thank you for that reading all the lyrics.
You're welcome. The first couple of years I did read the whole thing. It was like a marathon. All right. Any discussion? Please vote. I'm excited to see when we get to, I guess we won't get to see the preview.
The last one.
Oh, that, we're going there after.
Celebrate music.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
Two music classes.
Okay.
John, you have a vote. Colleen,
Yeah, it didn't come up.
okay, do you guys just want to vote out loud?
Yes. Aye.
Perfect. 6 yes.
Everyone. All right. AC is in consent, as is AD, AE, AF, and AG. Gets us to linking goals with agenda items. I'd say the students first and foremost, I think that focusing on the students' experience in the cafeteria has paid immense dividends, as well as, I want to commend this board. It was not always an easy decision to cover the lunches for our student body until they changed the federal guidelines and allowed us to cover. But I think that we're seeing a positive impact. And so it's always easier to say no to things. When it's for the good of the students at our school. But I just, I think that's students first and foremost for our, we don't really have a whole lot of other things. If you have any, please say them now or send them here.
Even another student presentation. The board has.
Oh, that's
likes
right.
to have
See,
certain
yeah,
numbers,
right.
so here's another.
So you're saying 11 is that
Student presentation.
All right. Brings us to the next for the good of the cause. Do we have any further?
we do not.
Okay. Next meeting and location will be March 19th. But a budget work session beginning at 6. And then coming up, don't forget, April 22nd, we have our BOCES budget vote on Monday. And then beginning in May, we'll have our first budget year, or our budget year. All right. Any old agenda items? Any new agenda items? All right. Recommended action is motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:12 p.m.
So.
Thank you, Doug. Do I have a second?
No, I'll round it out.
All right, thank you, Ryan.
Nobody else wants to raise their hand.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Yay.
Aye. Aye.
Yay. We'll accept both. We'll adjourn the meeting at 7:12. Thank you, everyone.